So sure enough, we went and applied for our first SBIR phase 1, and we secured that. And from that journey, that sent us to the SBIR phase 2 process. And I'll be gosh darn if we didn't get that one. And our client there was the Air Force / Space Force, where our mission was to help with astronaut rescue.
Hey guys, Ricky Howard here with DoDContract.com. You just heard from John Martin, who's the CEO of BUNDLAR, and his augmented reality startup has seen exponential growth due in large part to investment from the U.S. government. Now, this is through something called the SBIR program, which we're going to talk about, and this is available to anybody listening that has a technology they want to develop, or maybe you're selling it commercially, but you could modify it for government use. There's a lot there, has a lot of potential. Now, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Ricky Howard. I'm a former government procurement officer. I managed over $82 billion in contracts for the U.S. federal government. And then after retiring in 2019, started DoDContract.com. We help companies sell to the U.S. government, the Department of Defense. Something else we talk about in this video is conferences.
For starters, when I heard somebody like you who's been to many conferences speak so highly of it, and the way you could interact with the warfighters and from all levels, right? And then also some of the other primes were there. I just thought it was very focused. And for me, I have a lot to learn every day about the military and about the whole process. And you certainly guide us and help us. I found the feedback, the camaraderie was all very positive to me to best understand some of the needs that the various branches of the military might have and how potentially we could help solve pain points.
And finally, what you're going to learn is how important relationships are. As John and I went from a conference where we developed some of those relationships to just weeks later being invited through a competitive process to pitch the BUNDLAR augmented reality solution for foreign military sales.
What was exciting, Rick, you knew the right people, and I guess they gave you a choice to either do a Zoom call or you could come in person. And you're like, we're going. And
Oh yeah.
and I think you gave me maybe a 5-day notice or something.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, was super excited to go to Poland, and we went to the U.S. Army base pretty close to the Ukraine border. And it was like, our team got together, said, we got to give a real example.
And that took place in less than a month, from developing relationships to pitching to getting out there, putting our solution in front of U.S. Army and our foreign military sales partners, which not only helps John's business, it also helps our country and helps the security of our nation and our partner nation. Let's get into today's episode. I know you guys are going to learn a lot about selling to the government, the steps John took, what worked for him, and how you can apply that to your business. Let's go. Thanks everyone for listening to this week's episode of DoD Contract Academy. I've got an awesome episode, special episode I've been waiting to unleash upon everybody. I'm here with John Martin, and he's the owner of BUNDLAR. Hey, John, how's it going?
Good morning. Going well. Thank you, Rick.
Good. And John, we have a lot of businesses on here that we've interviewed that sell to the government, but I love yours, and we've also worked together. So we fit into that realm. So I have a little bit more information on what you guys are doing, but super excited about this because I think when we start unveiling your story and what BUNDLAR, which is the name of the virtual reality or augmented reality business, I think what people are going to see is how, when you're specialized and do something really well, momentum that you can get going in government and DoD contracting. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, my pleasure. Enjoy talking with you and your audience for sure today. So
awesome.
Let's get into it.
All right. Before we get into BUNDLAR, you are extremely interesting. And I know I probably first really got to know you when we attended a conference together last year. And really extraordinary history going back to radio and hearing about that. So first, why don't you introduce yourself? Just tell us a little bit about where you grew up and like your career before we even got into BUNDLAR.
My pleasure. I'm from Chicago, a suburb of Chicago called Winnetka. And I was very fortunate at a young age. I knew what I wanted to do, which was, I looked at my lifestyle. I said, I love music. I love sports. I love news, social events and all that. So I went and studied radio and television. at a place called Southern Illinois University. I went through that whole program, started with ABC radio in Chicago at a WLS AM and FM, and stayed in the radio track and ultimately ended up with CBS in New York. And I was with the CBS radio networks in New York, and that was a very fun initiative as they were trying to turn around the CBS radio networks to compete against Paul Harvey and ABC. I carried it on for quite a while. And I ran a research and marketing company called Critical Mass Media that was associated with a radio company called J-Cord, Randy Michaels and crew. And we were acquired and merged with Clear Channel Communications, which you might know today as iHeartMedia.
Oh, yeah.
And 1,200 radio stations. And I was very fortunate to be able to be president of Clear Channel Internet, running these 1,200 radio stations, bringing them together under one common technology platform for hosting and streaming and ad serving and content. That was quite an exciting project because we had to give all of these local brands brand identity, but keep them on one technology platform. And then once that was in good shape, I was able to focus on the next venture, which was Bundle AR. And
Okay.
that's summer of 2017 when Google and Apple both announced that they were all in with augmented reality on the mobile device. That was going to be the distribution platform for AR. And they had AR Kit, AR Core, and they made it so everybody in the world could have augmented reality on their mobile device, which everybody
Right.
already owned and was addicted to.
Sure. Yeah.
So to us, that made just a lot of sense to focus on augmented reality on mobile devices to start.
This is crazy. So so you were running radio stations initially. You loved the radio. I think a lot of things are interesting about this. One is you got into it before there was anything. The internet existed, but no one really knew what the internet was until really the 2000s is when everyone was really using it, late 90s. But podcasting, things that are replacing some of radio now, none of that stuff existed. Some people listening to this may not even remember that time where everything was on the radio, how important it was. And so you were in the thick of that, and you were involved in transitioning from that legacy technology to a new technology to convey some of the same stuff.
It was fun at that time. Rick, you might remember the talk show host, Rush Limbaugh.
Yep.
And Rush was one of the many network personalities we had in our stable, if you will. And this is before the cloud. So when Rush came on, a number of streamers was extraordinary because Rush was on many AM stations, and AM stations many times had trouble breaking into high rises where FMs got through.
Yeah.
So a lot of people that were in their office streamed him on their computer. For us, we had a server farm in San Antonio. So this is more AWS or Azure. And so we had to keep adding servers.
Right.
To be able to have people stream Rush. So yes, it was early.
That's amazing. People wanted to be able to stream his show. And before we even had streaming of podcasts and stuff, you just had to provide that just to provide one of your radio show talents to the people that wanted to listen.
And we were doing podcasting because you would take snippets or the hourly news that we would do. And those would be podcast available, if you will, the way we know podcast today.
Sure. Like what time frame is this going on where you started transitioning radio into streaming to the high rises?
We were merged in 1999. And then so the 2000, from 99 to 2000 through 2002 into 2003 was the window we were launching all of this and bringing it together. And we were way ahead of CBS and companies like AM/FM that had started. And so we were very much leaders in it for sure. We had very creative people that were wanting to do it analog and digital. And that's kind of led me into the whole journey I've been on as it relates to augmented reality also.
Sure. And then, so you worked a lot with AM. Did you work with it sounds like you worked with some of the FM and the music channels as well, right?
Oh, for sure. We had over 100 KISS channels.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah. And KISS, I know in Boston, KISS is still one of the biggest radio stations here.
When we had KISS in LA, and KISS became its own brand, if you will. Good, bad, or on consolidation, these consolidators would sometimes try to take a format like KISS and make it a national brand and for efficiencies and all that.
Sure.
And the power of the brand. But no, we had, you name it. We had urban, we had country, we had rock, we had oldies, any format we had. And format captains. So you might have a format captain who had 42 countries, a KISS captain who had over 100, a news captain, and so on. And so it was a big undertaking and enterprise for sure.
Yeah, I can remember sitting down with you, not just at the conference. We could talk a little bit about how important conferences are for government contracting and selling to the DoD, but even that eventually took us on a trip to Europe. I remember you telling me some of the many concerts you got to attend because you're involved in this industry, and I relayed some of that. I believe you were talking about Taylor Swift when she was a kid, and I was telling my daughters about that, and my daughter and my wife, and they were pretty jealous of some of the stuff that you've gotten to.
Taylor, she's been unbelievable what she's accomplished. But in 2007, I think it was, she came to Chicago and she was like one of the 3 openers for Brad Paisley. And I was like, who is this young lady? Man, did she have stage presence and
Yeah,
just talent. And I'm not surprised that she's achieved what she has, but it's really wonderful to see such I think, a positive influence on women, on moms and daughters,
yeah.
and creating a positive vibe and giving back to the community. There's so many different ways you've seen artists maybe do nothing to give back, but I think she's a good example for all of us on what to do with that type of platform she has.
Sure. You've been good throughout your career, I think, of seeing different opportunities before everybody else does, or potential where other people don't see it till later on, right? Maybe she's just another example of that. But so transitioning now to, you've worked in that industry, you've transitioned from legacy to the internet, and you're one of the early companies on doing some of that work. And then you mentioned you get to that 2017 place where you're now starting to see what the impact of having augmented reality on your personal mobile device could mean, right? So now this is the beginning of Bundle AR, and the main reason we're having you guys on today. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? So why is it named Bundle AR? What does it do? Give me the background. What's the scoop?
Thank you. I worked, Chicago's got this wonderful environment called 1871, which is Chicago's Center for Technology and Entrepreneurship.
Mhm.
In 1871, people go, why 1871? That was the Chicago fire. So
Oh,
this
okay.
is the reinvention. And the mayor, the governor, about 6 universities, about 10 private equity firms all got together and created this environment probably 13 years ago. At any rate, I've been a member there for many years, and I just love the energy and the vibe of it all. And not to get too detailed, but I had tonsil cancer 8 years ago. So I was coming out of this and I was like, you know what? I wanted to be hopefully an example for people who had cancer to say, don't give up. You can have a second round at this. And so at the time, I was very focused on that. And also, I looked at 4 technologies at the time, which was artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, and something called IoT, Internet of Things. And then I was trying to decide which of those 4 I was going to focus on.
Mhm.
And that's when Google and Apple, literally look it up, in the summer of 2017, they both announced they were all in with augmented reality. They said, this is how humans will be communicating with each other in the decades ahead. And then they both announced AR Kit and AR Core, giving tools to the development community saying, hey, make AR on our devices. And as you might know, Google controls Android
Mhm.
and controls iOS. And I was like, wow, that was a big announcement for me. So
Sure.
that kind of guided me into augmented reality. And so we started, and from this community of 1871, I found some technology partners who shared the same vision. And my son, Zach Martin, who's our COO and co-founder, we all got together and began the journey.
That is awesome. And I know when I ran into you guys, we were working together on a project, yeah, and starting with the ATA conference. That's where I met Bundle AR, right? The Tanker Airlift Symposium in Florida, I think it was this year. But it does change. Was it in Florida this year? Or was it in Florida the year before? It might have been in
Now,
Dallas.
was
It was in
Dallas.
Dallas. Yeah. God, I don't even know where I've been, John. But it was Dallas. And we were on the phone, right? And I was talking to you about, hey, this conference, because I'm a big believer in the power of being able to expedite your government contracting if you go to the right conference. And I think part of that for me is, first of all, is industry outnumbered by the government people there, right? But are the right government people? Are you going to have people that can put you on contract? You're going to have requirements folks, people with money, people in leadership positions, the user. And that particular conference, you get everything all in one, and you get cornhole competitions at night. And I was telling you about this on the phone, and literally you were there like 4 or 5 hours later. It's you just hopped on a plane and somehow made it down there. Maybe we can talk about. I want to talk about the conference, and I also want to talk about some of your government contracting up to that point. But maybe before we get to your government contracting up to that point, what about the conference made you want to attend it, and what were you think the high points and low points were?
For starters, when I heard somebody like you who's been to many conferences speak so highly of it and the way you could interact with the war fighters and from all levels, right? And then also some of the other primes were there. I just thought it was very focused. And for me, I have a lot to learn every day about the military and about the whole process. And you certainly guide us and help us. I found the feedback, the camaraderie was all very positive to me to best understand some of the needs that the various branches of the military might have and how potentially we could help solve pain points. And Rick, one thing I've learned from the Department of Defense leaders, they teach us about warfighters and about what they've learned about how warfighters learn. And it's changed over the decades, right?
Sure.
And I hate to be stereotypical, but let's say the warfighters from 20 to 40, let's say broadly, of course, there's older people than that too. But the way they learn today, they don't want a 192-page Boeing written manual, right?
Mhm.
They want immersive, on-demand, mobile training solutions when they want them.
That's right.
And so we learned that digital twins or subject matter expert videos or process flow, step by step, all those things were very important. So the more we can learn about the pain points from real warfighters and maintenance teams, hopefully the better we will be in solving problems that will be
Sure.
helpful in the military.
Yeah. Speaking as a former Air Force aviator, I can tell you even back then, we didn't want the 200-page or 800-page Boeing written manual. So it'd be much better to have something what you're putting out there. So this is a theme, especially among companies with innovative technological solutions like yours, is taking advantage of the SBIR program, the Small Business Innovative Research Program. And that is how you got your foot in the door and started talking to some of these leaders. Why don't you describe that process and what you like about it? And then we can maybe get into where we're at now.
You bet. It'll be 4 years coming this summer when we said, wow, I think we're onto something here that could really serve the military. And it was 4 years ago that we decided to have a dual purpose. One was DoD government, and the other was enterprise. And we attended one of the SBIR conferences, and I met a gentleman, Brett Scherenhausen, who was just so helpful in guiding us and introducing us to people and process and the flow and all that. So sure enough, we went and applied for our first SBIR phase 1, and we secured that. And from that journey, that sent us to the SBIR phase 2 process. And I'll be gosh darn if we didn't get that one. And our client there was the Air Force / Space Force, where our mission was to help with astronaut rescue. And that was fascinating to go down to Florida, go to the bases, go to the training, meet with the rescue teams, and to build out these training solutions. Because as you can imagine, like many situations with warfighters, they have to be trained on situations they've never been in before, right?
Yep.
And so how many of these people have actually rescued an astronaut from a ship that's landed in the ocean before?
It's funny, even if, and this is what was resonating, is one of the things I really love about the product, is it is on your phone, right? So when we're talking about something like virtual reality or even augmented reality, if you're thinking about the glasses, for everyone listening, forget about that. Even though your product can work on those things, think about the fact that everyone has a phone. And we were talking to COCOM commanders, we were talking to general officers and all the way down to the users. And a good, especially at that conference, but a good example of this would be a pilot, right? An Air Force pilot who flies the airplane, knows how to fly the airplane, gets trained on maybe refueling the aircraft or hooking up a power car to the aircraft. But typically, pilots, navigators, and flight crews, they don't have to do that. Typically, there's a ground crew that does it, a maintenance crew. But sometimes you're landing at a unfamiliar airfield or an austere location where you don't have that ground crew. The pilot often, or the navigator, whoever's on there, they need to look up, okay, I gotta look at the manual. How do I do this again? But now if they have a virtual reality app on their phone, they can just pull it out, And all of a sudden, if you just look at the screen on your phone, it could build a 3D model. If it's already loaded on there, you don't need internet, right? Of the power cart, of it can show you detailed instructions on how to refuel the aircraft. There's situations where it can recognize what it's looking at and provide details and labels and video. And it's the power of this is not that it's extremely complex. I think that it's in its simplicity, that you can be somewhere where you're disconnected, that you can just pull something out that's on your pocket, that's in your pocket, hit a button, and now you have instructions for something that could be very complicated or could be dangerous, like rescuing a astronaut. Hey, hit this button, don't hit this button, pull this lever, don't pull this lever. Those are things that in the moment when you have to actually do it and there's stress and pressure, you want something to reference to make sure you're doing it right. And it's very powerful. I would say most of the tools out there as far as VR, no one's carrying these headsets around with them. And even AR, if you need a internet connection for a military purpose, that could either you could be prevented because you're disconnected, or you could be prevented because you're in a classified location that doesn't have, or you can't even have a device like that. There's lots of different scenarios that really make that an attractive offering.
Rick, one thing that Zach likes to say a lot is a single source of truth. And that's another way of looking at it. If it is a process, if it's a piece of equipment, if it's a dashboard, if it's an engine, if it's a forklift, if it's a Jeep, whatever, and there could be a single source of truth where all the current information about that, the latest video from the general, the latest PDF, the latest stuff, it's all right there. And the beauty of the platform is if something changed, a new process, a new part, whatever, you could just add that to the bundle and then it's current.
And not to cut you off, but because there's a big and to that, right? So a lot of maybe the government people listening might be thinking, oh, and the government has to pay for a team of consultants to update the software. But that's with Bundle AR, I think that's one of the other big selling factor is updating Bundle AR is something that a troop can do or an airman can do on their own. They're an administrator, official user. You showed me how to do it. It's as simple as using any web application, basically, that, you might be used to using. And so you could go in there and update a step because a new checklist has come down or new tech order has come down. The user, the government or some commercial, they don't have to necessarily go to Bundle AR and have you guys do it for them. It's pretty simple to do a lot of that basic stuff.
And right now we actually, with the Michigan Air National Guard, we're training 5 people right now. So they could do it themselves. It's really up to our client, what they choose to do, but you are correct. We built a no code drag and drop simple content management system. So you can create, you can update, you can duplicate. It's pretty simple to use. And of course, if you need the help, we're there to help you. So it's really up what's best for you.
No, it's really awesome. And so one of our popular episodes, both on YouTube and here, is I don't even know if you've seen it, John, but I made a quick clip that I put on YouTube. Just hey, we found this foreign military sales op and went out to Eastern Europe, to Ukraine and Poland, very fast, but just showed how quickly, if the government sees something that fits their need, that solves their problem, how quickly you can go from, hey, that makes sense, let's get you in front of the right people. So all of a sudden, me, you, and another gentleman in your employ ended up on a very interesting trip, I thought, to show the Army Bundle AR.
What was exciting, Rick, you knew the right people, and I guess they gave you a choice to either do a Zoom call or you could come in person. And you're like, we're going. And
Oh yeah.
And I think you gave me maybe a 5-day notice or something.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, was super excited to go to Poland. And we went to the U.S. Army base pretty close to the Ukraine border. And it was like, our team got together, said, we got to give a real example. So we got a 3D model. We augmented it, put all sorts of knowledge. We call it hotspots, point touch, put a language switcher using a combination of Google Translation and AI. And for our AR enabled next gen knowledge information for them. And we did that all within a couple of days. So by the time we got to Poland and met you, we were able to present this live at our meeting.
Yeah. All right. I want to cover really quickly how we found the opportunity that we took John so quickly to Europe for. We were talking with the Army and some foreign military sales partners. So here's what we did right now, GovClose. So the first thing we did is we found a source of SOT. I'm going to show you how to do that. So we're going to go right to Sam.Gov. And next you want to click on search. Under all domains, we're clicking on contract opportunities. And this is for you searching for sources sought. You want to eliminate the noise. We want things that are due, I'm going to say in the next 3 months. And the notice type, sources sought. Now for John, at the time, I typed in augmented reality. You're going to type in whatever keywords or NAICS codes that you're using. Then once we find the opportunity, we go back into whatever system you're using to win government contracts. I'm going into my sources sought pipeline. Okay. I'm going to create the opportunity. Now I have an augmented reality FMS opportunity in here. You're going to put in the contact, the government contact in the opportunity that you create in your pipeline. This is sources sought. What stage are you in? Estimated value of the opportunity for this one, $500,000. You can assign it to whatever salesperson. This is important. So whoever's going to, if it's you, if it's somebody else in your organization, make sure you're assigning that to them. You want to know where you got the opportunity from. It's very important to track what source you're getting your leads from, because eventually you're going to know how many of those you're winning. So are you winning things you're finding on Sam.Gov? Are you winning things you're creating with relationships, conferences, etc.? There's a lot of other things that you're going to add in here, like federal agency. For this, it was the U.S. Army. If you're going to have teaming partners, etc. But you want to make sure, and of course, the link to the opportunity, so you can always go to that. And just quickly make sure your pipeline is going to reflect what you actually have to do. We identified the sources sought. We made a go, no go. We called the POC. That's very important. So I'm just walking you through. We didn't need a teaming partner for this. The government POC got back to me right away and said, hey, we want you to engage on this, which is great. So then it goes to write a response. So something like this, you're going to assign somebody to write the response. Once the response is written, you are going to submit the RFI, sources sought. Once it's submitted, this is very important also. You submit anything to the government via email, make sure they confirm receipt, because government email notoriously blocks emails from companies or anybody outside of the military or government organization. Now, for instance, if you're using GovClose, if you're a user of this system, or even if you're not, this will be helpful. What I need to do is what I need to know is who is my lead for this particular opportunity, right? Now, this is not a real email address. I just put this in here so you guys could see what I'm doing, but we want to confirm receipt. Now, if you are using GovClose, what we can do is just go right to our templates for communicating with the government. For this one, I'm choosing sources sought submission, use template. And here we have instructions, of course, because the very next thing you want to do is a demo, which is what we requested and got. You'll see here that I have please confirm receipt when able. If they don't confirm receipt, you reach back out to them the next day. Here are some parts of the email that you want to make sure you're using. You're thanking them and you're mentioning the exact solicitation you're responding to. You're not writing a paper, but you are expressing the value of your company with some type of use case. If you have a set aside that makes sense, you can put it in there. I usually avoid that, but if you are 8A, you might throw that in there because that lets the government sole source contract to you. Same thing with if you're a SBIR winner. See some of our other podcast episodes for what that really means. And we'd love an in-person demonstration to showcase. The whole reason you're doing this is to set up a meeting. You have to set up a meeting. All right, let's get back to John. It's really amazing how fast you were able to do that. And just for those companies that are listening right now, I think we pointed at a couple things here. One is going someplace in person is always going to be more profound than doing it virtually or just submitting a proposal on something, right? Because they're not going to know who you are. So now we made the effort to go there in person. So now we see them face to face and can have real conversations. But secondly, we didn't go there with a generic slide deck on the company and blah, 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 blah. we went there with a solution to their problem, right? And not the complete solution because we had limited details, but you were able to build something very specific to their need. And I think that is really where the power is. And that's not only because we're still talking to the government about that. That may or may not come to fruition we'll see what happens there. But many other opportunities were created in that meeting because in that meeting, we were talking with contracting officers and program managers and users of the system. And afterwards, they pulled us aside and like, hey, there's a couple other programs that this would be amazing for as well. Can we stay in touch? This is just basically generating. And I'm not instructing you, John, because we'll talk about how you're one of the best salespeople I've ever met. But these opportunities create more opportunities is the point. So you really want to seize them and squeeze as much out of them as you can.
And to your point, you never know what you're going to learn from the process or how it might lead to a new relationship or, wow, I learned this pain problem they're having. Gosh, what if I could do this on my next prototype? Or I remember meeting somebody at another convention who had a problem like that. Maybe I'll get back to them and share with them what we learned. Because I have found that there's a great commitment to wanting the absolute best for the warfighters. And there's certain organizations out there like the Defense Innovation Unit, whose job it is to find commercially viable solutions that could help today, not a 5-year procurement process.
Right.
Sometimes by the time you go through the procurement process, that technology you started to pitch them on could be 2 generations behind.
Yeah, absolutely. Very common in the military procurement and government procurement in general. Yeah, there's some great ways to expedite, especially if you have something innovative where time is of the essence. You can use SBIR, you can use other transaction authority. There are some other ways too. There's some sole source methods. What I would like, because we don't talk about this a ton, but I want to make a small pivot because you mentioned how much you learned about the Department of Defense and the military and applying your application to things. But I learned a lot from you just on sales. And I think a lot of people don't think about kind of sales and marketing with government contracting the same way they think about it in like maybe a B2C or B2B environment, but it's extremely important. So I'd like to know what, and if, by the way, anyway, if you see John Martin in action at a conference or in front of the government, you'd know what I was talking about here. Very personable, very driven and methodical about how you're putting a quality solution in front of them. But I'd like to get just some thoughts that you have. What's your general sales philosophy? Where did you learn this? Did you learn this in the radio industry? Or so where did this come from?
I guess it dates all the way back to even the college days in regards to Dr. Kurtz and the whole sales sequence. But I think so much of it is you have to put yourself in the shoes of your client or whoever it might be in solving their problems. One of the challenges I always have, I'm very market driven. And sometimes when I'm dealing with mainly an engineering company, they're very focused on the platform. I'm very focused on solving problems for the customer or military. So I would say a lot of it is a focus on serving their needs and hopefully paying attention to what the market is telling you. What are our pain points? Or in the case of Microsoft, where we worked with the Xbox team, they taught us about solving for the issue codes. And so that's part of what I'm always trying to focus on. What are the issues that people are solving for? In the case of the Department of Defense, they taught us a lot 3 years ago, which really guided our direction on our engineering in our product, which was they said, we like what you're doing a lot for warfighter readiness and maintenance, but for you to be a serious player one day, as far as being like program of record, you will need to containerize your platform. So when we tell you we want an instance of your platform on the Gov cloud on AWS, can you do that? 3 years ago, the answer was like, no, but we can start working on that capability.
Right.
That guided us. So that's an example of the market talking to us and then hopefully modifying your product to accomplish the needs of the market. Another one was Department of Energy, who's got these nuclear sites. And one of them's a nuclear waste site. And of course, the training there is critically important. They're actually going down 2,000 feet into a salt mine, removing the salt and replacing it with nuclear waste. Can you imagine the training that's required to make sure those workers there are safe? So they wanted us to be able to do an instance of our platform on their servers, on their site, and then integrate it with their learning management system.
Wow.
So it's wow. Okay. So the market will give you feedback on their needs. And then sometimes you're like, wow, that's a heavy lift. I can't do that. Then other times you go, that is something we could do. And does that mean it would be a solution that would be helpful to lots of other entities? I think yes.
Yeah. No, you're right. I think solving that's a huge piece of it, solving the customer problem and having that mindset. Also, I think it's often a conflict between the maybe sales executive, will say, and the engineer. Because the engineer, they're concerned usually with building the product and building a quality product. And the salesperson's, I think they often feel pushed by the salesperson. Hey, we can do it. We can do it. We can do it. I think a good executive or a good sales executive or account executive is always thinking, how can I solve the customer's problem? And how, if I have to make a modification of what we're already doing to solve that, then yeah, let's do it. No reason why we can't do it. Let's lean forward. And that's what the customer wants to see too. They want the solution to their problem.
I think you've identified 100-year-old constant battle between engineering and sales, right?
Yeah.
That's just how it works. My engineering friends will kill me when I say something like this. If I live in Chicago, a city north of me is Milwaukee, a city south of me, St. Louis. And I might have found out that the engineer said, we're going to go to Milwaukee. When we leave Chicago, go to Milwaukee and go to St. Louis. I go, there's a faster route. You could just go from Chicago to St. Louis and not go north. They're like, no, we already have our plan.
Yeah.
We're not taking our plan. And I always say, no, we have a better plan. But
that's right.
The sales guy coming from the market. Because sometimes the engineers, they do have a plan and they want to stick to the plan, even though there might be a better one. And the sales guy always wanted to do the better one for the client. And that's the net conflict. And I understand that, but that's probably one of my strengths and my weaknesses. I'm very in tune with the market, but I'm always trying to push the engineering to be responsive to the market in a timely manner. And sometimes it's conflict. And
that's why your product's so good. And I think that conflict exists for a reason too. Sometimes you're going to be, and I've certainly been guilty of pushing too hard. It happens on the government side too, right? You have program managers that are running the effort for the government, right? It could be a training effort that use a bundle AR. But then you have a team of engineers, right? And they might not be the engineers that built that bundle, but they are also involved in managing these efforts. And so you have people that are managing these efforts that may not necessarily want to add a delivery order to do that or make a modification, because that means a lot more work. And maybe it means a timeline delay. They might be thinking more about the program execution and the metrics versus what does the warfighter at the end of that whole process actually need? He doesn't care if you're meeting your timeline on your Gantt chart. He cares if he has that button that he can hit as an option that might save his life or get the mission done faster. So there is always a struggle, I think, between bureaucracy and doing something in a regimented way and what needs to be done right now. Yeah, really interesting. And I also want to ask you what your thoughts were on, because you are very good at follow-up and persistence. And I think that it's something we don't cover very often on this show, if you want to call it show. But one thing I do talk about is how long it takes to sell to the government. You touched on it. Hey, it could take 4 years to get in a program of record. It could take 12 to 18 months to win a traditional government contract. It could take longer than that, right? Even the SBIR process, even though it's faster, it could be on contract 4 months after you submit a SBIR proposal, but you also might have 4 months before you identify the SBIR that you're going after, another 4 months for them to make a decision. Then they have to put you on contract. It could still take you a year.
right.
So knowing those long timelines can you give everybody an idea of what is because I know your follow-up is really good. In fact, you bug me sometimes. Hey, Rick, if you followed up with, and I'm like, okay, you're right. I probably should throw something out there. What's your philosophy on persistence and follow-up? When you think you're doing it too much, or what do you think is like the right battle rhythm for following up on your needs?
Obviously, if we truly are hearing their problems and pain points and you're following up and you're trying to be helpful, most people are like, oh, damn it, thank you for following up. So hopefully the rhythm is right and you're following up on ideas that were helping them. They're normally appreciative. And then sometimes you're maybe following up, but sharing a new piece of information or a new idea from the first time you met them. Or in our case, I'm following up on Poland, it might be sharing another example or a way for them to experience it or giving them a video link or something that's helpful for them to keep it going. One thing I've learned with selling innovative ideas is there's not a budget for it from the prior year because they've never done it before.
Right.
Right. So that's the other thing. I've had multiple times where people go, your timing's good. We're actually not renewing that one contract. It wasn't what we thought. And we're going to slot you into that budget. And if I wasn't persistent following up, they wouldn't have necessarily thought about putting me in that slot from that vendor they didn't like. So
Absolutely.
if you're presenting new ideas, we have no choice but to follow up because we're creating a new budget.
Yeah.
It hasn't existed before. And that's the one thing that is wonderful about the SBIR program, small business innovation, right? Research. It's designed for new ideas
Right.
and concepts and new problem solving solutions. So just the whole concept of it is wonderful for what all of us maybe do on this podcast.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I honestly think that the persistence and follow-up is more important in government sales than it is in commercial and B2B sales. Not that it's not important there. Like even in the B2C, B2B place, I don't know what the saying is, but it's something like the gold is in the follow-up. And I've read statistics that have said, hey, it's not that first outreach where you make the sale, but it's in your third, fourth, or fifth follow-up where you are more likely to actually sell something to somebody, right? Whether that's a lead from advertising or you're saying seven.
Or seventh.
Yeah. Or seventh. And so, and if you think about a business can buy something from you right now. If it's a big business, there might be a little bit of bureaucracy in that decision, right? If it's a Microsoft, it might take a little longer than the guy that is a single business owner. But still, that timeline from finding out to making a decision to making a purchase is going to be smaller than it's going to take a government organization to do something. In my mind, it's all the more important to stay top of mind for the government, right? So now this might be something they want to do, but they can't even do it for 9 months. You have a lot of people that'll follow up once and forget about it. To keep up that repetition, staying in front, just like you were saying, because it also might be, if it's not in the budget, that you just need to hit them up when fallout funds are available, which, which for those listening, that's every year, every office in the government has a budget and the fiscal year ends at the end of September. And right, wrong, or indifferent, 99% of the offices out there, if they have a $10 million budget, they want to spend every dollar of that budget because they are afraid they won't get the same budget next year. So around May, we get fallout funds. So that's when they predict a shortfall in their budget. And they say, hey, we're going to have an extra $1 million to spend on something this year. What are we going to do? And they start racking and stacking the ideas. Hey, maybe we put Bundle AR on, or maybe we put this on there. But they might not even think of Bundle AR. If you're not hitting that program manager up at the right time, it might not even make it on the list. Not because they're trying to do something nefarious or not help you, but they just might not even be thinking about it.
Correct. And matter of fact, one of the command chiefs we met together when I did follow up, he was like, John, you got to be persistent. Don't give up.
Yeah.
And so he almost gave me the motivation. Hey, I was told by him, don't give up.
Yeah.
But not one person has ever said, your follow-up is too much. Don't share information with me. Not one time. Not one time. They're like, normally it's appreciative, or can you come visit me in Dayton or whatever? The answer would be, yes, I will.
That's right. I'll see you next week. John, I know we're coming to the end of the hour here, or the end of the interview, but I just wanted to give you an opportunity. Did you have anything you wanted to put out there for everybody about Bundle AI? Where are you guys at now and where are you going?
Thank you for that. I would say if there are folks that want to do a prototype, man, are we good at that. Fast turnaround. You do have an available budget of some sort to get rolling. But I think if you're focused on truly warfighter readiness and the absolute best tools and for maintenance, I think that's been a big focus for us. We would love to engage in any way we possibly can and help solve problems. And we're very loyal to our Department of Defense coworkers or colleagues. And we are honored to be of assistance. And we do want you to know that our platform, based upon the feedback we've got, it's modularly built. So as there's new innovations in the market, Rick, you might remember when we started, it was image recognition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, point your camera at something, see the image, and it watches the experience. Then we built in what's called marker lists, where you could just place the experience wherever you're at. Then we added geofencing, where, the geography of where you're at, the GPS coordinates can trigger the experience. And then we always had a pipeline to wearables. So we always had one to iOS, we had one to Android, and one to wearables. So this past year, we've been focused on the wearables. We've called the wearables market a little bit more of the Wild West regarding who's going to win it. In the
Right.
case of mobile, you had iOS and Android. In the case of wearables, there's 25 different companies all out
Right.
there, but we can publish to any one of them. So,
Oh, it's
so,
awesome. Yeah.
so that's an exciting time for us as we got into wearables. It started with a quick service restaurant chain that wanted it for hands-free training for the kitchen staff who was learning to make, certain recipes, and their
Makes
hands were
sense.
full of oil and
Yeah.
flour.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. John, how do people reach you guys? What's the best place?
Probably John, John at bundlar.com, BUNDLAR. And of course, I even give out my phone number because I'm 24/7 at 847-452-7664. And of course, our website, www.bundlar, BUNDLAR. And the name Bundle AR came because we bundle experiences that are AR enabled for next gen knowledge.
No, that's awesome. It's a great tool. I have many of them on my phone right now that we've gone through together. John, thanks for coming on the show today. For anyone, if you want to reach out to John, you can check out the show notes. We'll put all of that in there. He even gave you his phone number and his email address. You, the man himself, you can reach out and he always answers the phone. So I can attest to that. Thanks again for coming on here. Thanks for your team too, John. I know those guys are awesome to work with, and so are you.
Thank you. I know Lewis Gardner, Zach, and James, and the whole team says hello. And we welcome a conversation with all of your audience too.
All right. Take care now.
All righty. Take care.